Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I want to wish all my Canadian viewers a happy Thanksgiving. This is our long weekend for gathering with friends and family members and eating turkey. I know, we celebrate 1 month ahead of our American friends. Hope all of you have a great time and try not to eat too much. I personally hate feeling stuffed. Okay, if you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. This first one takes place in and around July 5th of 1995. We're going to be heading to Whatcom County, Washington, and the nearest town is Everson. I was driving home with my baby girl late after visiting my grandma one July night. I think it was the 4th of July weekend. I was coming up around a corner with a guardrail to my right. There is a gully with a creek at the bottom, and a telephone pole about 3 feet from the end of that. I was going around 35 miles per hour. When I almost rounded this corner, my light started hitting something that I thought was a telephone pole or guardrail at first, but I knew that it was something crouched down on the last cement guardrail post as I got closer. When I got closer, this thing stood up from almost sitting on its heels and jumped into the middle of my lane and threw its hands up in the air. I'm thinking about 8 feet total from a crouching position, I think trying to make itself look bigger. I think it was only around 7 feet tall. It didn't seem that much bigger than my stepdad and brother, who are 6'2", 6'4". I was so shocked. I could not believe what I was looking at, totally stunned. It was all black and definitely not a bear. I've seen a black bear and it was definitely not that. Its arms stretched high like a man's, not like a bear's. And I didn't see a longer nose like a black bear has. It was like a man's and not a dog's face. I think as soon as it realized I wasn't stopping, it laid down on the road right in front of me and I ran over it with my little Honda Civic sedan. My driver's side tires went over its head, and it was a very loud boom, boom as I rode over it with all 4 tires. I immediately started thinking about stopping and seeing if it was still alive, but all I can think of is that if I got out, it might come after me and then my daughter would not have a mother anymore. I thought, what if it did damage to my car and I got stuck out there with it and my baby? I cried the whole way home thinking I had just killed the only Bigfoot there was, and still, there is no doubt that that's what I saw. When I got home, my family had left a note saying that they had gone up to Canada to go to a wave pool, and there was no way to get a hold of them, so I thought about what I should do for about half an hour or so. I put my daughter in bed right away. I decided to call 911 and tell them that I had hit a bear, and I was worried that it was injured, and it would go after some of the young children who lived down a private driveway just across from where I hit it. I said I was also worried that it might cause an accident because it was in the middle of the road if it was dead. I wanted them to find it on the road. I wanted someone to discover it so I wouldn't seem crazy. As soon as I got off the phone with 911, I went out to the car to see what the damage was to my car. Amazingly, I only noticed one thing. My license plate holder with the dealership's name was broken in half and at the bottom half was gone, and the whole license plate was bent under the car. I bent it back and noticed some hair hanging from the license plate bolt. My dogs were circling and circling the car and wouldn't leave it alone. I grabbed the hair and thought maybe it would help if I got the hair off the car. I was thinking the whole time I was throwing the hair into the garbage that I should maybe keep it, but decided against it because I figured that no one would have believed me anyways. My lab's mixed hair was very similar in color. DNA testing was announced on the news only a month later. Can you imagine how mad I was that I didn't keep it? It was dark brown with some sort of reddish highlights to it. It was a wiry feeling. When my family got home, they did not believe me. My brothers to this day still tease me a little about it. I thought there was only one way to prove to my brothers and parents that I wasn't crazy. Call 911 and check out what had come of my call. When I called them the next day, they had no record of my call, even after I told them the exact time of my phone call. They couldn't find it. I decided to take one of my brothers with me to the place where I hid it and show him the evidence on the road. Surely there would be some left over from the night before. There was nothing on the road, no hair, no blood, no nothing. I just realized a couple of months back there should have been one thing for sure. The one other half of my license plate holder, but it wasn't there. I looked everywhere, but I didn't spot anything. It hadn't rained. It hadn't even been 10 hours later on a very lightly driven road at the time. My brother thought I was insane. I've only told a few of my close friends and family over the years, but only a few even think that what happened to me is possible. Most of them just think that I'm telling a joke. I sometimes hear the cry late at night, and it could only be a Bigfoot, but I haven't seen one again. The only reason why I'm coming forward now is because I never knew there was any organization for this sort of thing, and I wanted my brothers to apologize for teasing me for all of these years. I won't be holding my breath, though. Thank you for reading this. I appreciate it. This one takes place in the summer of 2005. We're going to be heading to Custer County, Idaho, in the Lost River Mountain Range area. It was the summer of 2005. A friend of mine, Wayne, and I decided to spend a day fishing at Upper Swagger Lake in the Lost River Mountain Range of Idaho. Visited mostly by locals, this alpine lake is stuck up on a ridge overseeing two long, dry canyons on opposite sides. It sits just at the top of the tree line, providing an uninhibited view of the sky and surrounding mountain peaks. The fishing is usually pretty good, if you like golden trout. I hate trout. They taste like mud, but I do love fishing, and some of the best, most secluded lake fishing can be found on these high Idaho lakes. Getting to Swagger Lake is not an easy task. It's a 100-mile journey over a lonely highway from the region's largest town, Idaho Falls. When you hit the dirt road, turn off, there are miles of four-wheel drive up a canyon to the hiking trails. Once on the trailhead, it's a 2-mile, 1,000-foot vertical gain hike up to the lake. But when you finally arrive surrounded by the bald peaks of the Little Lost Range, it's all worth the effort. Arriving at the lake around noon, we spent the day fishing, relaxing, and chatting. Far down into the canyon, out of sight from us, we continuously heard periodic loud blasts. Growing up in the rural U.S., you get accustomed to people target shooting on public land, and that's what we concluded was happening below us. From the sheer thunderousness, we guessed it was a large caliber muzzle-loading rifle. The blasts were spaced out long enough that they had to be manually reloading their guns. The shots reverberated and echoed throughout the canyon. Whomever was down there was having a bit of fun with their rifle. Unperturbed by the cacophony down in the canyon, we continued fishing, only momentarily reminded of the explosions as they continued to occur throughout the day. The fishing was great and the day seemed to flash by. Before we knew it, the sun was crusting on the mountains. We headed back to the camp for the night. Wayne had caught his limits towards the end of the day, while I had been releasing mine. We settled down to a campfire and watched the sun sink behind the mountain peaks as Wayne cooked his muddy fish. It was twilight now. Aside from the crackling of the fire, it was a quiet evening. The sky was absolutely clear, and we watched as the stars twinkled into existence in the sky. Our relaxations was interrupted by yet another one of those thunderous explosions, only this time much closer to us. That was weird. Target shooting is extremely dangerous at night. Whomever was down there in the canyon was being very irresponsible. Wayne nudged me with his elbow and motioned for me to look in the direction of the sound of the last explosion. While not directly visible to us, there was a light down in the mountain. It was illuminating the whole canyon. From the angles of the trees' shadows, we could see that the source of the light was not at ground level. It was up in the air and it was moving. We watched in bewildered silence as the light moved up the canyon. We still could not get a direct line of sight on it. There was another blast that seemed to shake my skull. The light in the canyon flashed almost 100 times brighter than before. We could absolutely not make sense of what was happening. As we sat there unsure of what to do, the light rose upwards out of the canyon. As it crested the trees and continued to rise, we could finally get a direct look. It was a brilliant ball of yellow golden light. Getting a size estimate was difficult, but I figured it was between 20 to 40 feet in diameter. The light rose silently above the canyon and then above our elevation at the lake. It stopped several hundred feet above the surrounding landscape and stayed there. The object's surface shimmered and danced. Little feathers of sparks would periodically jump away from the object and fall down towards the trees below. Wayne looked at me, and all I could do was shrug my shoulders and give him, "I have no damn idea. Look." After a few minutes, the ball surface stopped dancing. It was completely still in the air above us, no sound, no movement. Without warning, it exploded in a deafening shower of sparks and blinding light. Wayne and I instinctively jumped into the dirt and covered our heads. The light was so bright, I felt like I could see through my closed eyelids. The explosion shook everything around us. I could feel the shock resonate in the ground beneath me. It was like the world was coming undone at the seams. Then everything was absolutely silent and dark. The whole event could only have been a handful of seconds long, but it felt like hours. When we looked up into the sky, the ball of light was gone. We were left alone in just the dim light of the stars. Picking myself up out of the dirt, I could only say to Wayne, "What the hell was that all about?" He chuckled nervously, but didn't reply. We surveyed the camp and the surrounding area. Nothing seemed damaged or disturbed. There were no signs of fires that were started from the explosion. It was like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. The one thing that was off, though, was the time. It was late twilight when the light exploded above us, but my watch was showing 2 o'clock in the morning. Further baffling us was Wayne's fish. They were now charred, cindered above the bed of red coals that was once our campfire. I'm well aware of the phenomenon about missing time, but that was not possible. The stupid thing exploded, we hit the dirt, and then we picked ourselves up. Couldn't have been more than a couple of minutes from the explosion to us getting up. I didn't have the mental capacity to process what had happened. I headed to my tent and went right to sleep. It was a deep, dreamless sleep. When I awoke the morning, the sun was illuminating the tent. Wayne was already up and fishing. I asked him about his thoughts on what had happened last night, and he simply shrugged and said, "It either didn't happen or we saw something we probably shouldn't have. It's that or Marvin the Martian tried to kill us." We fished for a few hours that morning, then decided against camping another night at the lake. We packed up camp and hiked down to our vehicle. This happened almost 12 years ago, and I've been back to Swagger Lake several times over the years. I've never seen or heard anything like what we saw on that night again. I don't have an explanation for what happened, and I don't believe we ever will. So this story was submitted by Prep For It, who was on my last live stream last week. The date was not provided. It just says it happened several years ago. But we're going to be heading to the far regions of Canada. We're going to the Northwest Territories to Cosmo Lake. This happened several years ago. I had saved all through high school for this solo fly-in fishing trip. I was really looking forward to this 2-week excursion in Canada's far north region called the Northwest Territories. One plane and a train later, I found myself at the shore of Great Slave Lake. I met up with a bush pilot named Spirit. I had minimal gear because of the weight restrictions, but the lake company had stocked enough food and supplies for 2 weeks at a small cabin on Cosmo Lake, many miles north of the big lake. I was the first to fish on this lake. The Fly-In Adventure Company had just finished building a small cabin for 2 people. As the floatplane landed on the medium-sized lake, the cabin looked small but cozy. Spirit gave me 2 sets of keys and helped me unload my backpack and tackle box, etc. He said best of luck fishing and don't hesitate to shoot any aggressive bears or wolverines. I laughed a little, but by law, you had to have at least a rifle. It was a warm day and the cabin was perfect with 1 bunk bed at the back and a hand pump for fresh water, a stove, and a fridge both solar and wind-powered. A large window overlooked the lake. I made a coffee and went down to relax on the dock. I suddenly felt like someone or something was watching me. I looked all around me, but I could not see anything, just a chattering squirrel in a tree beside the cabin. One odd thing is that I could not move for what seemed like 5 minutes. I was frozen. I saw that I had caught a fish, but I could not reel it in. By the time I could spin around and look to where I thought I saw a big shadow, it was gone, and so was my fish. Now, if this was a recent story, I would not stick around, but there was no way I was going to end this vacation early. I cooked up my fresh fish that evening, and it was memorable, also because there was a loud crash outside at about 10 p.m. It was like the squirrel was mocking me. Every day was fun and relaxing until the second last day I was there. I had taken a small folding chair about 100 feet away from the dock, zipped myself up, and was wearing a mosquito head net. I just wanted to relax and listen to nature. I left all the lights on in the cabin as well as a small lamp at the end of the dock. I nodded off but was awoken by something walking through the dense bushes near the dock. My sense of smell was assaulted by a foul stench like moldy leaves and soil. It was then that I saw a big dark shadow moving closer to the dock. It seemed to make less sound the closer it got. I remember that I left my rifle in the cabin. It didn't matter though because once again I couldn't move. Suddenly I saw it. My mind flipped through all possibilities. Bear? No. Gorilla? No. Creepy tall man? No. It was a Sasquatch. It had something in its left hand. This thing was well over 7 feet tall. It slowly made its way onto the dock and pulled up the stringer of live fish that I had yet to gut and clean. As my eyes adjusted, I realized that it was a female and that she was carrying her baby. It was feeding its baby, my fish. Not sure if it helped, but I tried to be positive and not freak out. I thought to myself that I would never hurt this creature. Suddenly, a deep, deep growl came from the woods right behind me. I somehow knew that this was a male, probably the dad. I was still frozen in place. This made the mother dart back into the bushes lightning fast. The Bigfoot behind me made a quick grunt sound and bounded away through the forest. A few moments later, I could move again. My legs were stiff, but I never ran so fast in all my life back to the cabin, and I barricaded the doors with whatever was not nailed down. I swear Chatty the squirrel was laughing at me. I loaded the rifle and I just sat there in the big chair facing the door. I fell asleep and woke up at about 7 a.m. I packed all my gear into my backpack and I was cautiously opening the door when I saw the squirrel's tail on my tackle box. I think it was a gift for not being violent. The Sasquatch probably observed me giving the squirrel a rude hand gesture and yelling, "Shut up." I hopped on board the plane and eventually made it home. This really did happen. Thank you for letting me share my true story. Thank you, Prep Forward, for allowing me to share your story with the OC community. What an amazing encounter, and one that showed these beings in a different light. Let's face it, if they really wanted to hurt you, they could have. They had a sense of humor as well for gifting you Chatty the squirrel. It would seem to me that this family was observing you the whole time while you were up there. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed these 3 encounter stories today. Leave your love by hitting the like button and subscribing if this is your first time on my channel. If these stories reminded you of an encounter you may have had and would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I'd be honored to share your story on this channel. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Happy Thanksgiving again, and have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.